The Sony spin-off Spider-Man character films are known to be absolutely terrible, ranging from movies that are absolutely horrific to watch to absolutely horrific to watch, or so I've been told. So with the Kraven film coming out this week, I figured I'd watch all of these films and actually give my own well-constructed opinion on them, because my opinion is the only one that's right.
Oh, bruh!
I'm hoping to be pleasantly surprised, praying honestly, because if word of mouth is true, then your boy is in for an absolute doozy of a time. With that being said, however, I'm going to be ranking these films based off of a certain criteria. With that being, story. How well is the story laid out? Characters. Are they fun to watch? Do they have any depth? Action. Is it keeping me entertained? Is this movie entertaining? And lastly, does this movie work on its own without Spider-Man? Each of these will be out of 5 points, with the overall total dictating where they fall on the tier list. Now, with these categories in place, let's just dive right into the Spider-Man universe of characters without Spider-Man.
Have a nice life.
So one thing I forgot to mention in the intro is that I am doing this within 50 hours. Why? I don't really know. I just thought it would be fun, and, adding a time constraint might make things more interesting in the creative process of this. I don't know. But since this is more a guerrilla style video, I do think it would be fun to do like pre-watch thoughts for each movie. So I'm going to do that. It's not going to be long, so don't worry, you don't have to see me for too long. Now, when it comes to the movie Venom, I just remember being pretty excited for this movie when it was coming out back in 2018. It was a few years after The Amazing Spider-Man 2 released, so Sony hadn't made anything with the character in a long time, and I always enjoyed Venom. I think Venom is a cool character. At the time, I thought it was dumb that they were making a Venom movie without Spider-Man and kind of avoiding Spider-Man entirely, like not having the symbol on Venom at all, and completely shying away from Peter Parker or Spider-Man. I feel like Venom and Peter are tied 1-to-1, so at the time, I didn't really think anything of it, and my naive 14-year-old self at the time thought that there could have been a possibility that they were just lying to us and that Spider-Man was going to be in the movie. Oh, how I was wrong. So yeah, I remember thinking the movie was okay when it came out. Maybe it's changed. I haven't seen the movie in 6 years, so maybe I might like it more, I might make it less. Who knows? So I guess we'll just dive right into it then. I really liked this movie, I know, but I feel like this film perfectly embodies being so dumb, it's good. This film doesn't take itself seriously, clearly. Or at least it didn't feel that way to me when I was watching it. It reminds me of a really well-made B-rated film that happened to get a massive theatrical release and made way more money than it should have. Now don't get me wrong, there are a ton of issues with this movie. For starters, the fact it exists as a standalone anyway. I mean, the story itself is absolutely ridiculous and doesn't make much sense. All these symbiotes come to Earth, and this one symbiote, which turns out to be Riot, ends up scouring the Earth to find this one billionaire with a rocket so he can destroy the Earth and bring more symbiotes there. And Eddie and Venom are trying to stop them together because Venom basically falls in love with Eddie after spending a night with him. Like, literally. That's pretty much it as far as the plot goes. It's very simple, and most character motivations reflect that too. I will say Carlton Drake is like watching paint dry in villain form though. He is so boring, and it's a shame too because Riz Ahmed is such a good actor, and this character is so dry and wooden. And to be fair, pretty much every character besides Eddie is wooden as hell. Even Eddie is a pretty wooden character. It's just the fact he's played by Tom Hardy that makes it more bearable to watch. Whenever Tom Hardy starts tweaking out, it's the funniest shit in the world. I'm not sure if this movie is meant to evoke humorous tonnage in certain scenarios, but I couldn't help but laugh at a lot of different scenes.
You look like shit.
And you look as beautiful as ever. Jesus.
I'll say the action was quite fun, and the first transformation chase scene was pretty well shot and edited, in my opinion. Seeing the Venom arms throw dudes around in Eddie's apartment, to the motorcycle chase, to the final
Eyes, lungs, pancreas. So many snacks, so little time.
bit was dope. I also do like Venom's design a lot in this movie. I just wish Homeboy had that Amazing Spider-Man logo attached to it. However, the final battle sequence was like watching Rorschach's Blop mask fighting each other on screen. I could barely see what was going on. And even though this movie is 6 years old, this shit was not holding up well on rewatch. As I mentioned in my pre-movie thoughts, I didn't think Venom could work on his own, and while I do think Spidey is needed more so than without, I think for what it's worth, this movie isn't diabolically bad. I had a fun time with it, Tom Hardy was great, and there are some pretty funny and exciting action scenes here. So in terms of characters, I give the movie a 3, story a 3, action a 4, and the ability to stand alone without a Spidey a 2. Totaling this up to 12. It's funny though, you could tell this movie wanted to be R-rated with some scenes. If only they let it before Kraven. Like, what? Now, when it comes to Venom 2, Let There Be Carnage, there's really not much for me to say on this movie going into it. I barely remember even watching it in theater. Funny story, me and one of my best friends went to go see this in the theaters with both of our exes at the time. So yeah, not the greatest of memories, but other than that, yeah, I don't really remember much about this movie whatsoever. I just remember Woody Harrelson's like stupid ass wig and how he probably ate up every single scene he was in. So I kind of have mixed emotions going into this one.
Yeah, you're the big sexy hero.
Yeah, I enjoyed this one much more than the first. That may be a shocker to some, but I don't know, man. I generally think this one has much more going for it than the first one did. For starters, I really liked how well shot this movie was. I felt like there was some creative freedom behind certain shots. For example, the creativity behind the animated retelling of Cletus's childhood was really cool, and I forgot that a Sony spin-off had the ability to integrate this kind of stuff into a film like this. A lot of the shots in the final 45 minutes of the film look really good too. The first film had a color palette of gray, where everything looked pretty bland. It also didn't help that the main bad guy was a dude with a gray symbiote, so seeing the reds pop from Carnage was really nice. Speaking of Carnage, he looked phenomenal in this movie. I really loved how they designed him. Plus, his action sequences and powers were fun to watch. That whole final battle between him and Venom was so awesome, and was 10 times better than the riot fight from the first one, because for starters, I could see who was who, but also because the back and forth fighting from both was intense and exhilarating to watch. I even enjoyed Cletus as a character too. I know I mentioned that Woody Harrelson was probably going to shine in this, and I'd say he did. I had fun watching him do stupid shit on screen and acting insane. It was fun. However, I'm still very much of the opinion that a Carnage story needs to be hella dark and rated R, because Cletus is so deranged, dumbing him down to PG-13 should be a crime, especially when you combine him with Carnage. I should have been seeing the boys level of violence from him. I thought most of the characters in this were better handled than the first one. Besides Eddie, they pretty much make him go through the exact same arc as the first movie, where he for some reason loses everything in the beginning, is considered a loser, realizes how important Venom makes him, and then saves the day. The only cool aspect this movie does with Eddie is having him have to deal with Venom every day, and how that could literally drive you insane. Albeit for comedy purposes, which got out of hand a couple of times in my opinion, but overall, I thought that was pretty cool. Again, when you realize this movie isn't meant to be taken super seriously, a lot of the dumb stuff is just silly and fun. Like, would I prefer a deep and nuanced story about a man deep in trauma who gets psychologically attached with a parasite looking to amplify those traits? Yes, but with this dumpster fire of a studio, I'll take anything remotely watchable. And this movie is just that. The story is very simplistic with little intention of being anything more than a buddy comedy film starring Venom and Tom Hardy. Most performances were decent. Hardy gives a funny and good performance as Eddie again, with some standout moments. As I mentioned, Woody Harrelson was great as Cletus, but most of the characters were eh. Michelle Williams' Anne is back, but she's kind of shoehorned in, like Dan, characters that felt like the epitome of, we had them in the previous one, so they need to be here. But yeah, this movie's pretty fun overall, and I had a good time with it. In terms of characters, I give it a 3, story a 3, action a 4, and the ability to stand on its own a 4 too. I felt like this movie utilized the concept of Venom being on his own better than the first one, bringing this to a 14. Again, Kraven is the first R-rated movie, but not a film with a serial killer and a symbiote attached to one another. That's crazy.
Don't you open up that window. Don't you let out that antidote.
Hope the food's better in this joint.
It's day 2, if you couldn't tell by the change in clothing. And we've made it to Morbius. Now, when it comes to Morbius, there's not many thoughts I have going into this movie. Literally, the only thing I know about this movie is the memes. Like, I have never heard anyone talk about this movie as a film, like, in general. Like, if you go up to someone in the street, no one's gonna be like, Morbius, the movie about the vampire spin-off Spider-Man villain, right? They're just gonna be like, more $1 billion, and that's pretty much it. Maybe this movie is actually semi-decent. I have no idea. All I'm hoping for is him to say it's Morbin time. So yeah, all I know is that it made more $1 billion, was released by Sony in theaters, taken out of theaters, and then put back in theaters because they thought the memes were going to make it money, and then it lost even more money. So that's kind of funny. Anyways, I guess now's the time to just dive into the movie.
I'm not sure how I got here. Has to do with Spider-Man, I think.
This movie is just Venom, but worse. Like, in every way. I thought there might be some bright spots to it, but man, not even the memes can carry this. I guess the benefit the Venom movies have going for them is that they don't take themselves seriously, so whenever stupid stuff happens in the movie, you can kind of just play it off because you know it's meant to be dumb. But with Morbius, there's so many scenes in here that I know they're trying to make it serious, but there's no way on God's green earth that it's meant to be.
I'm starting to get hungry. You don't want to see me when I'm hungry.
Whoa, brother, whoa, now. You got too much dip on your chip.
I love how in The Incredible Hulk, Bruce gets clowned on for mistakenly saying this, yet Michael Morbius says this unironically. Of course he does. What I mean when I say this movie is very much like Venom, but worse, not only applies to tonality, but how the story plays out too. Michael is looking for a way to cure his diseases and finds special saliva from bats in some tropical region somewhere. So like any rational person, he sees one positive test and tries it on himself, which leads to him looking like Courtney Cox after one too many plastic surgery sessions. Then makes him feast on human blood, or he'll revert back to his diseased self. Or he won't. Whatever the plot needs from him. Michael isn't really that interesting of a character. He honestly reminded me too much of Riz Ahmed's Carlton Drake, and that's not a positive. Morbius is pretty bland and uninspiring. Much goes for almost everyone and everything in this movie too. Morbius' side worker, Martine, is dry. Tyrese Gibson's detective, Simon Stroud, is drier than sandpaper. And the only person pulling their weight in this whole film is Matt Smith as Milo. This dude danced half naked and still entertained me in the entirety of the other cast members. This film shockingly follows a similar plot thread to The Amazing Spider-Man 2, in that a friend doesn't want to give his other friend their blood because it'll be dangerous. Except that friend does anyway and turns into a monster who kills their girlfriend. Except Morbius comes back to life for some reason. Yeah, I didn't buy their hatred for one another at all. And it came so quickly that I wasn't really interested. This whole movie should have just been Matt Smith for 2 hours. I'll say the action scenes were pretty cool. I'll give them that. The one scene where Matt Smith kills a nurse was pretty thrilling. I would have loved if this movie went full horror thriller. But again, Sony really wanted to wait until Kraven to make these films R. Also, what was the whole point of having Vulture in this movie? Like, it literally made no sense. I know it's supposed to be related to No Way Home. Even when you look at that plot doesn't make much sense, so I don't understand why the MCU Vulture is in Morbius. And are like, they gonna do anything with this now? In terms of story, I'd give this movie a 2, characters a 2, action a 3, and ability to exist without Spider-Man a 1, bringing it to an 8. Of all the villains in Spidey's roster they could have picked, Morbius? Really? Oh yeah, little clothing change because it's a big moment, okay? We're watching Madam Web, alright? I had to rip out the Matt Murdock glasses because I've seen this meme and this image circulating across the internet, and my god, does it look stupid, but I had to match her energy, okay? Anyways, I'm so excited to watch this movie. Actually, of all of these movies, I'm the most excited to watch this one because I've heard nothing but terrible things about it, so I'm hoping it is so bad it's good. That's my only excitement about it. I really hope it's so bad that it's really fun to watch, because if it's really bad and terrible to watch, then I might just... I don't think I can handle another Morbius situation again, because that was rough to watch.
Has to do with Spider-Man, I think.
So without further ado, I'm gonna take my glasses off now and actually watch this movie. Wish me luck.
He was in the Amazon with my mom when she was researching spiders right before she died.
This movie is pathetically bad. Like, I truly can't think of any possible way for this script to have been rearranged for it to be good. It's like the studio greenlit this just to piss every fan off. It's laughable at how bad this movie was to watch. I got so tired of this film by 20 minutes in, I switched the speed to 1.5 times so I could just get the film done faster. And honestly, it was a great move because having the movie sped up just made it 10 times funnier. The story is absolutely ridiculous. Most of it is assembled because of a mythic spider people that involved Madam Web's mother and the villain of this film named Ezekiel. Ezekiel ends up killing Madam Web's mom and steals one of the spiders, which curses him, and Madam Web is born in tropical waters with these homoerotic robotic-wearing spider people. This chance encounter gives Madam Web powers after being a normal human being for like 30 years. It's funny though, the movie never explains why it took her literal decades to get powers. She just gets them out of nowhere and then moves on. The villain of this film, Ezekiel, is the Wish version of a symbiote suit costume. Like, what the hell is this? Any scene with this dude is hilarious though, but not in a good way.
Guys. We have to go.
He'll just be like, I'm going to die by these 3 girls in Spider-Man related costumes. I need to kill them. So what does he do? He gets access to a worldwide network from an NSA executive and uses it to spy and track these girls. Listen, man, if I had a vision with Sydney Sweeney in a Spidey costume on top of me, let's just say I wouldn't want to wake up, if you know what I'm saying. But speaking of her, goddamn does she suck at acting in this movie. Like, I know the script is bad, but dude, some of her acting was so bad it was ridiculous.
I think I'm having a heart attack.
It also doesn't help that she's supposed to look 16, but her mid-20s ass is giving off naughty schoolgirl vibes with that wig. But she's not the only bad actress, or actor for that instance. Dakota Johnson looks like she's struggling to perform lines from the script every scene, and Ezekiel is just awful at acting, man. Like, oh my god.
Give me the spider.
No, you're making the wrong decision.
Give it to me.
It's just really hard to follow a film where essentially I'm watching Spider-Man get overpowered by an empath and 3 schoolgirls. Like, there should be no issues for you, gang. Just snap their necks and move on. None of the main protagonist girls are interesting to watch either. In fact, they kind of annoyed the shit out of me, and their backgrounds are insane. One's father got deported, one's is in an insane asylum, and then the other's family just dipped to Asia and left her at home. What? None of the action scenes were really interesting or fun to watch, so literally the only saving grace in this film falls on the guy that played Ben Parker. I did enjoy his presence in the movie, even though this film is actively avoiding saying the names May or Peter Parker.
Does it have a name?
We're saving that for one of the games.
I'll say this though, although this film is hot garbage, I laughed a lot, which can't be said about Morbius. I think if I got hammered out of my mind, I'd find Madam Web to be the greatest thing ever made, or if I watched Morbius again, I'd just get annoyed. But anyways, being realistic here, I'd give Madam Web's story a 1, characters a 1, action a 1, and god, this movie can barely keep it together without Spider-Man. It shouldn't exist, so it's getting a 1 as well, giving this movie an overall score of 4. This movie shouldn't exist whatsoever. Yo guys, we're on the road to 10,000 subscribers, so if you haven't subscribed yet, hit that subscribe button. The faster you do, the quicker I'll get my Harry Potter ranking video out, so get to clicking away. I can see the finish line, like in the horizon. It is so close. We are almost done watching all of these movies. And after watching Morbius and Madam Web, I'm actually starting to lose my mind.
It's Morbid time.
It's day 3, and we're closing in on the 48-hour mark, which means I have to find tickets for Kraven somehow, but looking at this week's projected box office for the movie, I think I might be the only one in the theater. But disregarding Kraven, we're on Venom 3, and honestly, my expectations for this movie is that it's probably going to be the same as the first 2. So I enjoyed the first 2. I think I'm going to enjoy the third one. So I'm expecting, a nice conclusion to Tom Hardy's character and Venom too. Maybe there's some new characters that might be fun. I don't know. I literally know nothing about the story of this movie, and I didn't feel like reading spoilers. Honestly, there wasn't even spoilers like circulating for this movie. So what can you expect with a third Venom movie? I don't even think people genuinely thought it would get this far. I didn't think it would get this far. We have a Venom trilogy over a Superman trilogy and an Andrew Garfield Spider-Man trilogy. What world are we living in?
We are drunk.
Why did this movie make me emotional? Of all these movies, especially after the garbage that was Madam Web, Venom: The Last Dance surprised me. It was a very earnest and thoughtfully made movie, in Sony terms, of course. And that was very shocking to me. Of course, there's still the hit-or-miss dialogue, some cringy scenes, and absolutely bonkers ones, too. And maybe Madam Web set the bar so low that this just felt really good to me, but I don't know, man. I liked this movie a lot. I went into this expecting a fitting trilogy send-off, and I got one. I genuinely got a bittersweet kind of feeling near the end of this movie. It reminded me how long these movies have gone on for. I was only 14 years old when I saw the first one, and I'm about to be 21, and so much has changed in my life since then. So seeing this kind of closure for this random chapter for my life was pretty heartwarming. In terms of the movie itself, I felt like the story was kind of basic. In summation, it comes down to Null, this godlike creature wanting revenge against the symbiotes because they locked him away for eternity. So for the whole film, it's just Eddie and Venom on the run, trying to hide from the symbiote killers. The positives of this movie come from the dynamic between Venom and Eddie. Where the second movie played on their relationship a bit too much comedically, this final movie gives them a chance to kind of seldom appreciate their journey together, and I thought it resonated. Eddie's character felt the most mature here, realizing how special the relationship he cultivated with Venom was, and how he interacts with this random hippie family was nice to see too. Side note, they got the guy who played the Lizard in The Amazing Spider-Man to play the hippie father, and I just know for a fact they were going to use him to be Lizard until like a last minute change behind the scenes, because there's no shot in hell they did this unironically without some behind the scenes drama interfering. Speaking of the hippie family, they're okay, nothing too special, but what they provided for Eddie's emotional journey was sweet. We also got some new characters here in Juno Temple's Dr. Teddy Payne, another scientist type looking to analyze symbiotes, and Chiwetel Ejiofor's Rex Strickland. And both are kind of bland characters, nothing too special about them besides Payne's backstory, where she accidentally killed her twin by electrocuting him. Yeah. Kind of wild. Null is a pretty bad villain though. I mean, he doesn't do anything in the movie besides sit. Kind of like the Fallen from Transformers 2. The action in this movie was a ton of fun though. I thought the desert horse ride chase sequence was great. All of the symbiote action sequences with the symbiote killers was really nice. And the final battle sequence where Venom sacrifices himself was not only sad, but awesome. Seeing all of those other symbiotes using their powers was really cool. Again, this movie works on the basis of Eddie and Venom's relationship to carry you through the film. And I couldn't help but feel sad seeing Venom go out like that at the end of the movie. Will Sony have the balls to keep him dead and move on from this trilogy? I hope so, but I doubt it. Also, the final sequence where it replays all the memories they shared from previous movies was really touching. I just hated that the song Memories by Maroon 5 was playing under it. I wanted to stick a screwdriver in my ear. In terms of characters, I'd give this movie a 4, story a 3, action a 4, and its standalone ability a 4. Bringing this to a 16. I'd definitely say this was my favorite Venom movie of the entire trilogy.
There's a man going round taking names.
We made it, ladies and gentlemen. We made it to the final installment of The Sunk, which means we finally made it to Kraven. I bought tickets, so me and my 3 friends are all about to go watch this movie. And you know what? How fun would it be if I brought you guys along? We made it to the movie theater, and we're literally about to go watch Kraven the Hunter. I've heard nothing but absolutely terrible things about this movie. Thoughts going into it, I think it's probably going to be terrible, but probably a bit fun because I'm with my friends.
I love you guys.
But I don't know. We'll see how it goes. Give me like 2 hours and I'll make up my mind.
When the man comes around.
All right, we just came out of Kraven. Yeah, it was kind of like how I imagined it. It wasn't very good. Since I brought my friends, I'm just going to give you their thoughts on the movie first before I kind of dive into the entire thing. Yeah, we're just going to do that first. Jake, what did you think of the movie?
That movie was questionable at best.
I just barely remember most of it. Trash.
What did you think of like the story overall?
Very bland. Didn't really have much depth to it.
It really just felt like one of the movies ever. Or I guess like another way I would put it is like I never watched Morbius before, but it feels like a Morbius for like the Sigma male.
The writing and the story was entirely predictable. I was watching the film feeling like I was reading the script itself.
I think the director thought he ate with a few of the decisions that he made, but in all, it was very much vanilla.
I don't disagree. And of the characters that were in that movie, was there any that stood out to you particularly?
The chameleon. Not going to have any spoilers, but, you know, I wish they went a different direction with the chameleon.
I will say the idea of Kraven that they gave within this film was somewhat good. There was some justice to give Kraven as a character, but it just wasn't done well enough.
You're actually Russian, so can you...
I'm not from Russia, but yeah.
You have ancestors from Russia, so can you comment on the accents that were provided from the movie?
So to give the movie some props, in the beginning, yes, it was actually pretty good, but especially from like the main characters and some of the characters that you could clearly tell weren't Russian or of that kind of descent, it kind of started to fall a little bit on its side. But overall, I mean, I will still say as a silver lining, it was a good effort.
What did you think of the action in this movie?
Action for a minute was okay, but a lot of it was very cheesy and it just didn't really hold up to the expectations going into it.
The action wasn't entirely bad, but I still feel like there could have been a lot more better produced scenes and sequences within the film. That would have benefited the overall story.
So in terms of the action, I'll give it the movie that. The action was pretty decent.
If you had to rate this film out of 5 stars, what would you give the movie?
Overall rating, probably like a 1.8, solid 1.8.
I give it a 1.5, 2 at best.
I'll give it like 1.3 Kraven thirst traps out of 5.
Sin City wasn't made for you.
All right, there you have it, folks. Another 1 freaking star review for Kraven. It's finally my time to give my opinion on this movie. First off, I'd like to say this challenge of watching all these movies in 50 hours absolutely destroyed my brain cells. I think I haven't seen more terrible films in a row in a short amount of time, like ever. Kraven wasn't the worst one I've seen, I'll say that. I thought overall this movie was pretty trash. The movie isn't really that good. From a storytelling perspective, it kind of was just like all over the place. Like the beginning, for instance, is all about the kids. Kraven as a child, so it takes up like 30 minutes of that time. This is a 2-hour and 10-minute film, so the first 30 minutes is nothing but young Kraven. So I completely forgot like Aaron Taylor Johnson was even in the movie. I didn't really enjoy that part. Also, let me put this into perspective. Kraven has powers in this movie. So he's not just like a random Russian dude that really likes to travel and kill people. He is literally enhanced with lion DNA and then gets like this vial of potion serum that turns him into a literal lion hunter thing. And I mean, we've seen Kraven be different before, like in Spectacular Spider-Man, he was a lion. But like, I don't know, this movie was just kind of weird for that. I will say, in terms of characters that stood out for me, it was definitely Russell Crowe. I think he was easily like the best person in this movie without a doubt. He had the accent on lock. He honestly reminded me more of Kraven than Aaron Taylor Johnson as Kraven. And in terms of him, like, he was okay. He kind of gave his best, but his accent was kind of pissing me off. Like, it literally would go from one scene, he's trying to sound like a Russian guy, and then the next scene, he sounded like some dude from Kansas. Another main character in the movie is Kraven's brother, who's named Dimitri, and he sucks for, like, literally an hour and 30 minutes of this movie. And if you played Spider-Man 2, the game, you know that the Chameleon is the brother of Kraven, and so they reveal that in this movie, and it instantly made the movie so much better. I think they should have just led with the Chameleon as the villain. And yeah, other characters, like there's this other character named Calypso in this movie, and she's kind of just there. You know, a lot of the characters in these Sonyverse films, all of the side characters suck. No side character in any of these movies is any good, which is just kind of a shame. One thing I wanted to comment on was the villain of this movie, and it is the Rhino. Sony tries to redeem themselves with the Rhino instead of a mechanical suit with a Russian guy in it. It is a Bane-like dude that takes some sort of like liquid venom and it turns him into a literal like rhino. Yeah, it was kind of cringe. That dude sucked. The acting in this movie is pretty bad. I'll also say that. The acting is really bad. And I like Aaron Taylor Johnson, but he really sucked in this movie. Like, a lot of the people in this movie sucked. In terms of action, I thought it was fine. You know, it's just like your standard Sony action. The CGI kind of looks like shit. And all of the landscape shots, most of them were CGI. Like, you could easily tell they're on a green screen, which like totally takes you out of the movie. At least for me. In terms of characters, I'd give this movie a 2. In terms of story, I'd give this movie a 2 as well. The action, I'd say, was kind of a letdown. I honestly think Morbius's action scenes were way cooler, which is crazy to say, because Morbius is trash.
Has to do with Spider-Man, I think.
But the action in Kraven, I'd give like a 1. I'd say the ability to stand on its own without Spider-Man, I'd give it like a 2. I think it works better than Madam Web. In total, yeah, this movie is like a 7. It's right up there with like Morbius. I don't know. I don't think you need to go see this movie. So, as I was editing this video, it literally just became announced that the Sony universe of spin-off Spider-Man characters is officially canceled. So, pop open the champagne, celebrate a little, because we don't have to see any of these movies again. However, I do think it's funny, though, after seeing all these movies in a row, how many of these end on cliffhangers or, like, expected sequels. Like, Kraven 100% thought I was going to get a sequel. With Chameleon, Calypso, all those characters. Morbius had that whole Vulture setup sequence, which none of these things are going anywhere. So I think that's really funny. You know, what a way to end your franchise. If they knew they were going to cancel the entire franchise, why not just go out with Venom 3, which is literally the conclusion to the IP that started your whole franchise? You know what I mean? Kind of makes no sense. Thank you for watching this video, everyone. I hope this was somewhat entertaining. I don't know. This was a bit different, but I think it was a lot of fun. And honestly, being able to see some of these movies with my friends and filming in public was like a lot of fun, and made this movie and made this kind of 50-hour challenge much more interesting and fun to do. But what are your thoughts on these movies? Do you guys have any sort of opinions on them? Let me know in the comments below. And while you're down there, hit the subscribe button and also like this video, because if you like this video, it'll be pushed out to more people like you who likes these kinds of videos. And we're on the road to 10K, so if you want to see me drop the Harry Potter video and rank all of them, please hit that subscribe button. I hope you all enjoyed this video. Please watch this one that's being recommended to you right now. It's also really good. And I'll see you all in the next one. Peace out.